On behalf of Institute of Engineering and Technology, DAVV, I really welcome you, sir, in this faculty development program on cyber security. First of all, I would like to uh, give you a big thanks because you could find the time in spite of your very busy schedule and responsibilities. First, let me introduce you with participants. Sir has been holding a very senior position in Raja Ramanna Center for Advanced Technology, Indore. Shri S.S. Tomar completed his bachelor's in engineering in year 1994 in computer science engineering and his master of engineering in computer automation subsequently. Since 1994, he is working in computer division of RRCAT Indore, a research and development institute of Department of Atomic Energy India. He is presently heading the Information Security and Network Application section in RRCAT. In last 27 years, he has contributed in a number of projects both of national and international importance. He was involved in setting up a secure and robust campus-wide network of more than 4,500 nodes at RRCAT. He has developed an in-house team with expertise in open source network security solutions. He is the chief architect of multi-layer, fault-tolerant and failover components-based security network at RRCAT Indore. He also he has also audited large networks of more than 1,000 nodes as a leader of team for their readiness in handling hack attempts by intruders. He has also provided technical consultancy to BSNL Indore during the period when internet was in its initial stages in Indore. He developed the first of its kind full-featured interactive web-based telephone directory for BSNL Indore in 1999. He has set up the intranet at BSNL Indore and Bhopal during that period. He has provided technical solutions to BSNL Indore during that period. He has also contributed towards various international projects. The most significant among them is LHC, that is Large Hadron Collider project at CERN, Geneva. He contributed by developing an instrumentation setup for testing and training of superconducting magnets. It was a first of its kind setup in whole of the world at that time. He also contributed in the development of software in C++, Oracle, MySQL, and Python for various sub-projects under LHC project. Till date, he has 36 journal and conference publications in his name. His research areas include network, web security, and quality of service in both IPv4 and IPv6. Now, sir, I invite you to address the participants.
Yeah, thank you, Raksha, for the introduction. And I really welcome all the participants who have joined remotely for this online conference. I will be talking about cybersecurity, recent advances in cybersecurity. Basically, it will be a practical oriented, like whatever experiences I have gained over the past 27 years. So I will be discussing those topics. So let me start my presentation. Is it visible to all the participants? Raksha?
नहीं दिख रहा है, शैलेंद्र नहीं दिख रहा है।
शेयर नहीं हो रहा।
शैलेंद्र आपका वीडियो ऑफ करके देखो, नहीं तो कभी कभी आपका वीडियो ऑफ किया ना तो चालू हो जाता है प्रेजेंट नाउ में करके।
सर शेयर स्क्रीन से ही हो रहा है ना?
हाँ नहीं, शेयर से ही कर रहा हूँ, बट वो विंडो टैब नहीं दिख रहा है मुझे, जो जिस टैब पे खुला हुआ है पीपीटी। जस्ट होल्ड ऑन, बिकॉज मुझे इंटायर स्क्रीन तो दिख रहा है बट वो टैब नहीं दिख
हाँ
रहा है।
सर, वो कभी कभी टैब से या विंडो वाले उससे नहीं होता, फिर वो शेयर स्क्रीन से ही हो पाता है।
इंटायर
ऐसा हुआ है
करूँ क्या? इंटायर
एंटायर
स्क्रीन?
से तो श्योरली हो जाएगा। आप एक बार ट्राई कर लीजिए, विंडो से या टैब से आप करना चाहें तो एंटायर से
हाँ।
हो जाएगा 100%।
ये अभी मेरा स्क्रीन दिख रहा है?
नहीं दिख रहा सर अभी।
दिखा क्या?
यस सर, अब दिख रहा है।
ओके फाइन। So I start my presentation. The topic is the recent advances in cybersecurity and the National Information Security Policy and Guidelines of Government of India. As you may be knowing, cybersecurity as such is a complex topic to deal with. So every nation has provided guidelines and made policies for handling it at various stages. Like it may be government organization, it may be any private organization, it may be any ISP. So these guidelines apply to all these entities. Now I will be covering my presentation in the following manner. Like first of all, I will be briefly introducing as to what all topics I will be majorly covering in this talk. Then followed by a brief about cybersecurity, some basics. Which will be followed by cyber hacking, terrorism, warfare, which are the topics which are being talked about most in the cyber world nowadays. Then we will also talk about advanced cyber attacks that have taken place. I will give you some few examples. The cyber attacks, basically they are malware attacks, the ransomware attacks that have taken place in the last 5 or 6 years. Then I will talk about air gap security, which is considered to be a foolproof security, but over the years it has been proven that it is not foolproof. So I will explain as to how this is addressed in the real world. Then I will talk about advances in cyber security, which will be relating to the various practical technologies that are used nowadays in cybersecurity world. Then I will also briefly touch upon the cybersecurity ecosystem in India, various government organizations which are involved in providing cybersecurity measures and dealing with various cyber crimes, cyber terrorism, cyber warfare, implementing and formulating policies. So I will cover a brief about that ecosystem also, and followed by some innovative measures in cybersecurity which I've been involved in. So since I've been involved with the internet since its beginning in NOR, so I have seen internet grow from its very nascent stages, like initially when there were modems, then there came DSLAMs, then we have hi-fi networks with Wi-Fi networks, and then we have this cable networks, high-speed networks. So I will be discussing what measures we have taken, like say specifically my team has taken to provide the cybersecurity in a large network of about 4,500 nodes with about 2,000 active users always online. And then followed by a summary about what is going on in the cybersecurity world, so that I will present at the end. Now, to start with, what is cyberspace? Okay, cyberspace, as you all may be knowing, that it consists of computers, networks, internet, and anything connected. Anything connected is a cyberspace. So it involves people, processes, and technologies. So people are the main entities who use the cyberspace. Processes are the various techniques that are used to utilize this cyberspace, and technology are the tools that are used to formulate this cyberspace. Like it consists of the networks, networking equipments, and computers, and all these things. So we have an ever expanding cyberspace, That is, the cyberspace has grown from, like say, it started off in 1970s, and now the cyberspace is about 30 million nodes which are connected, 30 billion nodes that are connected. And by the end of this year, it is expected that it will grow to somewhere around 40 millions or so. So we have more connected devices than the human population. Now, connection of these devices increases the attack surface vectors. That is, attack surface vectors is like, say, whatever is exposed to the outside world, it constitutes an attack surface vector. And due to this, there are chances of vulnerabilities being exposed, which leads to attacks. Now, whatever softwares you write or the hardwares that we have that are connected to the internet, they may have some vulnerabilities. That is, since these are very complex programs, complex technologies that are used, so they are bound to have some vulnerabilities, and which, when exposed to the outside world, then they evolve into threats. So initially, like say, in any organization, the benefits of getting connected, they outweigh the risks. That is, when you do a risk analysis in the initial stages, you feel that the information that you have or the data that you have is not very crucial, and hence it doesn't constitute the risk. So initial risk analysis assessment in any organization leads to the inferences that the data that they have is not very important, and hence it can be connected to the internet right away. But as time goes and the data that is stored in the various nodes on the network that is connected in an organization becomes important, then basically there is a threat to that threat of the data, and then this threats and vulnerability exploits and all these come into picture, and then the organization has to formulate a patch and vulnerability management program, and that is a continuous process. Like you cannot say that I have patched my operating system about 1 week back, so I will not do it now. So it is a continuous process. So continuity management is also an important criteria when we talk about cybersecurity and dealing with cybersecurity. So there are some best practices, that is the information security policy of any organization should follow some best practices that are laid down by various government agencies. So in that context, the National Information Security Policy and Guidelines 5.0 that have been released by Government of India, they provide a good baseline for formulating the policy of an organization. Now, the cyber security is looked at from this point of view. The cyber attacks, the major cyber attacks that have occurred in the past few years, which have really affected the whole of the world. Now, I have listed down 5. There are many, but I have listed down only 5, and I will discuss as to how these attacks infect and affect the various people. The first is the WannaCry ransomware virus, which many of you may have heard about. Then the ransomware, okay, you may be knowing what is a ransomware. Like it encrypts the data that is kept on your laptops or the PCs, and then it asks for a certain amount of money, which, if not transacted, unless and until that money is transacted to that account, they will not provide you or decrypt the files that they have encrypted. Then there is this Mirai botnet, which has infected almost all types of IoT devices. Now, this is the first of its kind IoT based botnet that has infected the IoT devices all over the world. Then you have this Conficker worm, the Stuxnet worm. I will describe all these things in detail when I go to each of these attacks. Then this Stuxnet virus, now this was an attack that took place in 2009, and this virus infected the Iran nuclear establishment, whereby the centrifuges that were located in that nuclear plant, they got infected. The control systems of those centrifuges got infected, and ultimately that led to the centrifuges going bad, and 20% of the centrifuges got wasted in the process. So that is the Stuxnet virus. Then you have this DTRAC virus. This is a recent attack on the Indian nuclear plants that has happened in the year 2019. So I will discuss about this a bit later. Then all these cyber attacks, now what has happened is these cyber attacks are now sponsored by states. Now, the two particular examples that come to my mind are, first is the Redico group of China. That is again a state sponsored, which is sponsored by China. And the recent disruption of service that they have, that is like a US report has stated that this group was had a hand in disrupting the power, or in disrupting the power services in Maharashtra that had happened in 2020, recently in 2020. Then this Lazarus group of North Korea, which has developed this DTRAC virus, or the malware, you can say, infected the nuclear power plants in India. So now what is happening is these cyber attacks are becoming more and more powerful, like all these tools that they have, because they are sponsored by states. So the amount of money that is going into this is very huge. So hence they are able to procure such high quality equipments whereby they can launch attacks simultaneously, and more powerful attacks on the adversary nations. So now, till date, it was presumed that the air-gap security is the best form of security. But what has happened is, because a lot of devices which are connected to various important establishments like the nuclear power plants, the thermal power plants, the oil and natural gas extraction companies, so all these are basically being controlled by controllers ultimately. So they have the software and the hardware component. So now various attacks have taken place whereby air-gap security have also been breached. So I will talk about that also. Then we will talk about, I will specifically be talking about the advances in cybersecurity, the practical aspects related to the system's firmware, like you have this UEFI secure boot and the trusted platform module, whereby nowadays the computing devices or your mobile devices, they have this feature whereby they are bound to an operating system. Like unless and until the operating system is signed and authorized, then only the operating system will be able to use that hardware. Then you have the operating systems which provide this virtualization and sandbox execution. That is to say that nowadays operating systems are built with this sandbox execution models, whereby prior to execution of any program, that program is executed in the sandbox and its behavior is observed. And if that behavior is not found to be in line with the certain policies of the system, then that program is not allowed to execute in the main operating system. Then you have this access control, which is built using firewalls, the network access control, that is the endpoints are not able to connect to the network if a network access control is in place, and if that user is not authorized, then that endpoint is not allowed to connect to that network. Then you have this unified threat management systems with two-factor authentication, then the data diode. So I'll be talking about these technologies briefly. Then this network channel has also got enhanced by IPsec and SSL VPNs. These you may already be aware of these terms. Then in anonymity, like say anonymous usage of the internet, you have this deep web, the dark web, and the Tor network, that is the onion routing. So I'll be discussing about that also a bit as to how this anonymity is achieved. Then the recent advances in browsers, whereby the HTTPS protocol has been enhanced with the perfect forward secrecy and the HSTS protocols. So I will be discussing these technologies also, that is how the security has been enhanced by usage of these technologies. Then you have, like say, when we have to assess the strength of security of any system. So first step that takes place is the vulnerability assessment. So we have these tools related to vulnerability assessment in the form of Nessus, which provide a detailed information about the various assets that are connected to the network, the vulnerability status of all those assets. So there is a good documentation of all the vulnerabilities that exist in all the versions of the various operating systems that are designed, that are being used all across the world. So that database is used by these vulnerability assessment systems. Then in the field of web applications, also, like there are advances in cybersecurity. Like we have tools, various tools by which you can assess the various working of the various applications for their cybersecurity related threats or the various vulnerabilities that these applications may be having. So that can be analyzed in advance. Then you have this threat hunting, which is based on this Yara rules and malware hash registry. Now, threat hunting is a concept whereby once like it is observed that certain vulnerability has been exploited elsewhere in the world, then threat hunting refers to a technique whereby in the different organizations, like if you have the threat intelligence, then you get those details as to what are the symptoms of such threats, and you try to hunt it in your organization if such threats exist in your organization. So for that, there's a development in the direction of Yara rules and the malware hash registry. I will be discussing a bit about that also. Then in threat intelligence, there are systems like the security incident and event management system, and followed by indicators of compromise and indicators of attacks that provide us the basic threat intelligence and help us in diagnosing the various hack attempts or any attacks that may have taken place in the network. Now, I will also be discussing a bit about this endpoint visibility. Now, in any network, huge network, there is a prime requirement of making all the nodes in the network visible in a centralized location, so that you know what is going on in that node, like what all processes are running, what all packages are installed in that system, what all network ports are open in that system, what all connections are being established in that system, and so on. So for that, we have, like say, recently there's a development on this OS query, like by which you can query an operating system for all these log information, all these status information, using the RDBMS SQL-like queries, structured query language queries. Now, so first of all, let us have a look at a typical network connection to internet. Now, in typical network is connected to internet using multiple paths and protocols. Now, all these paths and protocols increases the attack surface of the network. Like if you have two protocols running on your network, like the IPv6 and the IPv4, then obviously the attack surface increases by two-folds, because now you have to protect your IPv6 resources also, as well as the IPv4 resources also. Now, if the organizational network is a large one, then there's one-hop security problem domain. There are two problem domains on the internet related to network security, or sometimes which is also called as cyber security. That first is the one-hop security problem domain, and other is the usual internet security, cyber security that we discuss. So one-hop security problem is related to the security issues which are prior to your router, before your router connects to the internet. And the other security issues like the UTM, the antivirus, and all these issues, they are related to the cyber security, that is the interconnections with the outside networks. So to give a brief overview of how important cyber security is, let us have a look at some of the statistics. Like data breaches, if you like this I have collected from some source on the internet. Like hackers attack every 39 seconds on average 2,244 times a day. Now, with that rate of hack attempts, now it becomes very crucial that all the systems that we have in place should be updated regularly. Like, because if any system is not updated and like say there is a vulnerability in that system, then these hackers are bound to take advantage of this fact and will definitely hack that system. Now, data breaches exposed 36 billion records in the first half of 2020. Now, let me tell you an example here. Like say the LinkedIn account or the LinkedIn database was hacked in about in the year 2012, whereby various information which was which also contained password information was stolen by the hackers, and that was misused later on. Like credit card information was also stolen, and a lot of other details were stolen in the process, and that was misused by the hackers at later point in time, and this is still being misused. That data is still being misused. So the average annual security spending is around about $2,691 per employee. That is what the statistics says in that of that organization. Now, where do cyber attacks come from? Now, 48% of the malicious email attachments are Office files. Now, this is like the files that you have in your system. They are the biggest source of any attack. So that is what this slide shows, that 48% of the malicious email attachments are Office files, and 34% of the data breaches involve internal actors. That is to say that nowadays the internal threat management is an important aspect. Like earlier, what organizations used to do was they used to protect themselves from the outside world. Now it is very important that we also look into the internal threat management aspects of cybersecurity. And 65% of the groups use spear phishing techniques. Phishing and spear phishing, you will be aware of. These are the techniques, some social engineering techniques by which you try to gain access of somebody's information, by which you can further gain authorized access to their private information. So this phishing and spear phishing, now 65% of the groups use spear phishing techniques, whereby they continually try to send some mails to those persons whom they are trying to hack, the accounts of whom they are trying to hack, and this has led to loss of revenue also. Now let us have a look at the 10 most common attack vectors. So the first is the software vulnerabilities. Now, okay, this is obvious. Like if you're writing a very complex software which contains a lot of if then else loops with memory consumption and a lot of processes involved, so and with a lot of persons involved in the team, so all these factors lead to or can lead to a lot of software vulnerabilities that can occur in the software that you have developed. So these software vulnerabilities are the most common, are the first type of attack vectors. That is, they're high on that list, like on the attackers list. Then second is the compromised credentials. Now, compromised credentials is related to the passwords that you may be having, or the PIN number, or whatever details you call as the credentials, like the credit card PIN number, or the credit card details. Then third is the weak passwords. That is, if you have passwords whose strength is not as per the standards, that is, it doesn't have special characters, or it doesn't have capital letters, and its length is not is very less, then these are the weak passwords, and these can be extracted by using or harvested using dictionary attacks, and they can very well be guessed by the hackers. Then the fourth is the malicious employees. Now that is again related to the insider threat management. Like say if an employee wants to provide access of his resources or her resources to the outside world, they can very well do that because they have the authorization for the resources that are kept inside the organization's network. Then poor encryption, again usage of like say old encryption algorithms, like say old encryption algorithms like is using 40 bits instead of the current standard of 256 bits. So all these lead to attacks that take place due to poor encryption. Then the ransomware attacks that you may be knowing that, like again, this is related to the encryption of files or the resources that are kept on your computer or the mobile, and then demanding ransom in turn for decoding that information or decrypting that information. Then the phishing attacks, again, you have emails which are sent to the sent by the hackers to the person whom they want to hack the information about. So these emails contain links to some well-known sites, but with certain mistakes and some spellings or which look similar to that. Like so the website also looks similar to that, and this name of the website also looks similar to that. So this is how this phishing attack takes place. Then you have this misconfigured devices. Now, this is a big concern for network administrators because a lot of devices are to be configured. It's painstaking to configure each and every device with all those details. So sometimes what happens is the network administrators, they do not pay proper attention to the configuration of the devices, and in the process, that vulnerability or the misconfigurations can be exploited by the various hackers. Then the trust relationships, like if you have authorized certain persons to access certain information administratively, and if the hacker is able to access the authorization details of that person, then this trust relationships by which the system is trusted to provide the services to a trusted user, like that is exploited, and that hacker can misuse that information as per his requirements. Then the 10th, the last type of, the 10th most common attack is the distributed denial of service attack. Now this is to do with crippling the business of any organization by launching distributed denial of service attacks by utilizing others' resources, like say the resources that are available on the internet. So these are the types of botnets that can affect the various service providers or the services that are available on the internet. I will now let me discuss about this Stuxnet virus. Now, why I'm specifically discussing this virus is because this was a first of its kind virus which breached the air gap security. Now, what is air gap security? Like if you have important set of servers which you need to guard against hacking, then what you do is you separate out that network and do not connect it to any network which is connected to the internet. So this is how you provide the air gap security. Now, this network of Iran's uranium enrichment program, like uranium enrichment is a process by which you separate out uranium U-235 from uranium-238 by using some centrifuges. So these centrifuges are used for uranium enrichment, that is to separate out U-235 from uranium U-238. Now, how intelligently this attack was planned, and now this was again a state-sponsored program. Like say, you may be knowing that the Iran's nuclear program, the US didn't want Iran to develop its own nuclear equipment. So it was in the interest of the US and the Israel to sabotage their attempt. So what they did was that they actually utilized the chain supply attack, whatever centrifuges were available at the Iran's nuclear plant, they were being controlled by Siemens controllers. Now, Siemens, you may be knowing, is a third party which provides controllers, like programmable logic controllers, PLCs. Now, these, the attempt to sabotage the network that controlled the centrifuges was initiated by, first of all, hacking the Siemens PLC controllers providing companies. Now, the supplier chain, that is the suppliers who were providing these PLCs to these to Iran. Now, the network of that company was first of all hacked. That is in terms of like the malware, the Stuxnet virus was first of all introduced in those companies, and then it was intelligently programmed in such a way that if any controller, if you plug in the USB into that computer or that PLC controller, then it will be automatically copied and it will replicate itself to the other controllers also. Now, this was a huge problem, since the centrifuges that used to operate at a speed of 800 to 1000 megahertz, 800 to 1000 hertz. Now, at this speed only, these centrifuges used to work for separation of this U-235. But by introducing this virus, these hackers were able to control the speed of the centrifuges, and the speed was made from variable speed was programmed from 2 hertz to 1000 hertz. Now, what happened because of this was that centrifuges started getting affected because of the change in speed. And the other thing that they did was that those who were monitoring these centrifuges, like they also changed the monitoring program in such a way that the speed of the centrifuges was not getting detected. The change in the speed of the centrifuges was not getting detected. So this is what they did in that Stuxnet virus, and the uranium enrichment program of Iran was derailed in the process, since about 20% of the centrifuges got affected, and like say they went bad and they had to repair and replace all those centrifuges. So this was a very major virus that infected the Siemens PLCs. Now, these PLCs were also installed in other parts of the world for controlling various other devices, like in the dams or in the other places also. So now all these locations whereby these PLCs were installed, they also got infected with this virus. Then the second most virus which infects is the Win32 configure virus, which is again a worm which spreads using a network. So now this is also a very a virus that infected a large number of computers all across the world, and some of the companies were hugely affected by this virus, whereby what it used to do was that if there was an unsecured or open shared folder without latest security update or antivirus software, then it infected that system, and those files were corrupted in the process. So this configure virus had its various versions, like configure A, B, C, D. So the various versions of this was formulated by their inventors, and it did a lot of manipulations in the PC, and affected the resources that were available in the computers. Then again, the third ransomware virus that I have chosen, or the malware you can say, is the WannaCry ransomware. Now, WannaCry ransomware exploited a vulnerability in the Windows operating system. that vulnerability existed in Windows XP, in Windows 7, and was very Windows 7, Windows Vista, and the operating systems that were available at that time. Now, since Windows is mostly used in all the organizations, so this spread so quickly all over the world that it infected a lot of PCs, and since it was a ransomware, a lot of businesses came to a halt because of this. Like, it used to encrypt the files, and then it used to ask for the ransom, and if you did not pay the ransom, then it used to leave the files in the encrypted state, and thus making the system unusable. So this is the WannaCry ransomware, which exploited the vulnerability in the Windows operating system. Now, the vulnerability or the exploit is known as the Eternal Blue, and the impact of this virus was so huge that the Microsoft, which had already stopped rolling out the updates for Windows XP, had to compulsorily roll out an update for this Windows XP platform also, along with the Windows Vista and the Windows 7, which they were about to do. Then I will talk a bit about this Mirai botnet, since it affected a lot of IoT devices. So IoT devices, you will be knowing that the surveillance cameras, these scanners, these printers, these all have this intelligence whereby they have the software code. Now, this Mirai botnet infected all those devices and launched a DDoS attack on the target system. So it was a command and control type of attack, whereby the attacker was able to gain control of these IoT devices and could launch attacks on the target systems, whichever he or she chose. Then this DTrack virus by Lazarus Group of North Korea. This is again a very major virus. Now, the typical working of the virus is that it extracts the key logging. It's basically a key logger, and browser history. It extracts out that browser history from the hacked PC. Then it also extracts the IP hosts, the running processes, and all the files of the computer. So actually, this virus infected the nuclear establishment, some official PCs of the nuclear establishment in India, and it got undetected by the Symantec antivirus software that was being used by that organization at that point in time. And this resulted in the remote desktop access of the systems. Like they were able to get the remote desktop access of the systems by using this virus. Now, I will just quickly give you an overview of the basic constructs of cybersecurity. Now, what is cybersecurity? When we talk about cybersecurity, basically, if you define it, then in one line, then I will say it is an unauthorized access to restricted resources or privileged access to cyber resources. Now, this is what the crux of the cybersecurity is, that if you are able to stop this unauthorized access to the restricted resources or stop the privileged access to the cyber resources, then you have implemented the cybersecurity well. Then the risk assessment plays a very important role in cybersecurity. Now, this is because of the fact that all the systems, intelligent systems or the intelligent devices that humankind has made, now these devices, the complexity of these devices goes on increasing day by day. And these devices are bound to have these vulnerabilities, inherent vulnerabilities in the systems. So hence risk assessment is carried out by the organizations which tend to use these devices or the products to figure out that even if some mishap happens in the form of hacking attempts or hacking that succeeds, then what are the risks, and then based on that assessment analysis, that is the risk assessment analysis, they can invest in cybersecurity. So the risk assessment analysis is done by every organization, and depending on the type of data that they are managing or the type of data that will be stored in that network, the cybersecurity serious cybersecurity is handled in that perspective. Now, cybersecurity, information security, you may be knowing that the basic tenets of cybersecurity are this confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So this holds good in cybersecurity also. The information security or cybersecurity, these are both interchangeable terms. Although cybersecurity informs, the cybersecurity also involves large networks, and information is involved in those networks. Hence, information security tenets like confidentiality, integrity, and availability, they hold good for cybersecurity also. Then cybersecurity is about authentication, accounting, authorization. Now, if the processes involved in any system, they have a good authentication, accounting, and authorization mechanism, then those systems are said to be having a good cybersecurity. And cybersecurity again is based on these two basic principles of hashing and encryption. So I'll just go through these things. The CI triad, that is the confidentiality, integrity, availability. So confidentiality is a set of rules that limits access to information. The integrity is the assurance that information is trustworthy and accurate. And availability is a guarantee of reliable access to the information by authorized people. Now, this is a very important aspect in cybersecurity. That is, the access of the resources, or the access of the resources should be reliable. That whosoever is authorized to access that resource, he or she should be able to access that resource wherever required. Now, let us see what is the meaning of these various terms like confidentiality and the mechanism that it provides. That is the security first block. If I take confidentiality, the meaning is to protect data from being read by others. That is encryption. The mechanism is encryption. The mechanism for providing confidentiality is encryption. Then integrity is protect data from modification or deletion by others. That is message authentication codes provide this mechanism. Then non-repudiation, when you talk about non-repudiation, it is protection from sender denial condition, and this is provided by the usage of digital signatures. Availability is making data available to the right person when needed, and the mechanism involved is the HA clusters and the disaster recovery sites. That is the high availability clusters, whereby like the resources are spread over the network and multiple resources are provided. So in case one of the resource fails, then the other resource is available to the user. So that is the high availability. Then you have the disaster recovery sites. That is if some disaster happens to one of those networks, then the other network is available and the services are available from that network. Then authentication, that is the proof of user validity. Now, this is the mechanisms available for the cybersecurity implementers are the pre-shared keys, the trusted certificates, and the message authentication codes. So this is a various relationship between how do you implement the various security tenets, that is the confidentiality, integrity, non-repudiation, availability, and authentication. A bit about hashing and encryption. Now, hashing and encryption, when we talk about these two, the difference is basically that encryption is a two-way and requires a key to encrypt and decrypt, while hashing is one-way. There is no dehashing. Like once you have generated a hash of any text or any message, then you will not be able to do the reverse process. That is, from the hash, you cannot find out the message. While in encryption, like say if you encrypt it in one way, then you can decrypt it in the other way also. Now, the various applications of the hash functions are that if it is used alone, then it can be used as a fingerprint. That is the file integrity verification and public key fingerprinting. Then for password storage, it is used. That is the one-way encryption. Nowadays, the passwords are not stored the way they are generated by the user. That is, it's not stored in the plain text. Now, that text is converted into a hash, and then the passwords are stored as in hash formats and not in the plain text formats. So, like say earlier in those when I talked about this LinkedIn data breach. So what happened was they were storing the passwords in plain text, and that is why this led to a lot of systems, the unauthorized access to a lot of system resources by the hackers. Now, the combined with encryption functions, if the hash functions are combined with encryptions, then you have this message authentication codes, that is the MACs, which protects both the message's integrity as well as the authenticity. And if you have the digital signatures, then it ensures non-repudiation, and it also encrypts hash with private and verifies with the public key. So this concept you may be aware of. Now, when we talk about integrity, then if you have a current message, then you pass it through a hash function to get a current digest. And then you can check whether, if you have a previous digest, then you can check whether the message is the same or it has changed. If it has changed, then you can discard that message. Now, it is very useful to create a one-way password file, that is a store hash of password, which is not an actual password. And for intrusion detection and virus detection, we keep and check the hash of the files on the system. Now, this technique is nowadays being utilized by a lot of cloud-based antivirus softwares, like whereby they keep a hash of all the files that are infected, that is the malware infected files. I will talk about this malware registry database, or the malware registry hash registry system a bit later. Now, the password verification, now like just a brief about how passwords are stored. Like, say, when you store a password, so you basically store the hash of the password, that is either you store the MD5 or the SHA-1 or the SHA-256 form of the password. Then when the verification takes place, the user provides the password, which is again hashed, and this hash is actually checked in the database. Now, to have two different passwords with resulting in different hashes, so a salt is added, and the password in the password file we store both the hash and both the salt and the encrypted password, so that it can be derived. The hash of the password that the person is providing along with the salt can be derived and checked against the stored information. Now, authentication, again, it has to do with like to verify whether the message, the message which has been sent by that person, and which protects both the message's integrity as well as its authenticity by allowing verifiers to detect any changes to the message content. So if any bit of the message content is changed, then this MAC will not match with the MAC that is calculated for the message that has been received. Now, the complexity in implementing cybersecurity is because that security is to be implemented at every layer involved in the communication. That is, we have to do it at the physical layer, the data link layer, the network layer, the transport layer, the operating systems, the processes, the applications. So we have to follow a defense in depth approach. We cannot leave any layer of communication unguarded. So we have to guard all the layers. So this is known as a defense in depth approach in cybersecurity. Now, the challenges, as you were knowing, that it is how to implement it at every layer. It's too costly and time consuming to implement it at every layer. You have the MAC layer attacks, the IP layer attacks, the transport layer attacks, and the application layer attacks. The implementation of security, like how these things match, like encryption is related to confidentiality, signing is related to non-repudiation and integrity, and access controls is related to availability, whereas logging, like when you log certain information, then you are basically protecting yourself against the non-repudiation, integrity, and carrying out the forensics of the information. Now, the basic building blocks for cybersecurity are like this centralized AAA service, that is the authentication, authorization, and accounting. Now, for that, we have various open source softwares in the form of LDAP, the Radius, and the Diameter. Now, these are various solutions that are available in open source for implementing a centralized AAA solution. Then this intrusion detection and intrusion prevention. Now, these are required to figure out whether an unauthorized access to the systems has happened, and if it has happened, then it can be blocked online by using an IPS. So now for that, the most common software that is used is the Snort. Then you have these VPN concentrators. The VPN concentrators provide you to implement VPN networks whereby users can connect to the networks and access the network securely. So the mostly available solutions use this OpenVPN technology or the IPsec technology. Then you have this UTMS, that is the Unified Threat Management Systems. There we make use of open source softwares like the Untangle. So various commercial products are also available, but like this open source software is also available in the form of Untangle. Then for honeypots, these are considered to be very good for detecting zero-day attacks, whereby you can you provide a bait to the hacker to figure out as to what are his intentions, and once you figure out his intentions, then you can very well take care of the zero-day attacks that may happen to the systems in the future. Then the network traffic profiler, that this is a major requirement in any large network, whereby you need to keep track of like what type of traffic is flowing across your network, what ports are open, what for how much durations are they open, and who is accessing those ports. So you need to keep track of the source IP, the destination IP, the source port, and the destination port. So this all information can be taken care of by installing the network traffic profilers, which is the NFSyn and NFDump, which are open source softwares. Then you have this log analyzer in the form of OSEC, like all the security devices or all the components of the network, they generate a large amount of log. Now, this log has to be analyzed by the administrators or the person who is taking care of the security related aspects of that organization. Now, for analyzing these logs, there are systems that are available. Now, OSEC is one such system which can provide alerts based on the logs that have been generated in the system. Then nowadays, you have this software-defined networking by which you can build security various devices, like say using softwares only, like you can develop firewalls, you can implement UTMs using softwares without using the specialized hardwares. Now, coming on to the cyber hacking, terrorism, or warfare. Now, like say till the year 2010 or 2012, like almost all the attacks were related to defacing of the websites, like by which used to cause harm to the reputation of the organization. That is like say the resources that were kept at the internet DMZ, they were mostly accessed by the hackers, and some content was changed in those devices, like say web servers. So web servers used to flash web pages with some information that was posted by the hackers. But recently, like say, more of these cyber hacking has been converted to cyber terrorism and cyber warfare, because the amount of resources that is being invested by the state actors is quite huge, and now they are able to perform sophisticated attacks on the critical information infrastructure of any nation. And this leads to cyber terrorism or cyber warfare. Now, cyber terrorism is, like say, if you are able to affect a large population and with some miscommunication, and which can lead to conflicts. So these are the types of information for which you can use various social engineering tools. So all this is in the rise. So cyber warfare is attacks on the critical infrastructure of a nation. So like say, if you attack a critical infrastructure of a nation, that is considered as a cyber warfare. And the critical infrastructure includes the power grids, the pharmaceutical systems, the healthcare systems, the oil and natural gas extraction, the pipelines, the transportation systems. Like I said, there's a lot of interest of all the nation in the development of this high energy electromagnetic pulse generation devices. Now, these are the devices by which you can install the electronic devices of any nation by just generating one pulse. Now, so these are very high energy pulses which are generated by detonation of nuclear devices or by other means. And this has been cited as the major threat in any cyber warfare, since almost all the electronic components that are being used, like say any computers, servers, or mobile devices, they all can be stalled, and their operation can be stalled at any point in time by generation of this high energy electromagnetic pulses. So all the nation, so every nation is looking forward to have some defense mechanism for these attacks against this high energy electromagnetic pulses. Now, what is a state-sponsored cyber attack? Now, first of all, see what is the national objectives for using cyber power. Now, every nation uses cyber power for the following, for achieving the following objectives. That is, first is the surveillance and monitoring of the domestic groups. Now, the governments, they are interested in the monitoring of the various domestic groups, what they are doing. Are they planning any attack or any other social engineering mishap that can take place because of their activities? So the government is interested in the surveillance and monitoring of these domestic groups. Then the second objective is the strengthening and enhancing national cyber defenses, that if they find any loophole in the national cyber security infrastructure, then they are able to strengthen and enhance this the infrastructure. Then it is controlling and manipulating the information environment. Yes, like say if social engineering, if the users are communicated the positive news, then they will react to that news positively. So that is how the government wants to control and manipulate the information environment. So they want to send the information that they would like to send to control the various entities. Then the foreign intelligence collection for national security, they are also interested in the intentions of the various actors that can cause harm to the national security. So they collect the intelligence information related to the various foreign actors. Then the commercial gain or enhancing domestic industry growth. Now, commerce is a very important aspect for the growth of any country. So the commercial gain, the government is always looking forward to if they can utilize this cyber power to have an upper hand over other nations, so that they can gain commercially and enhance the domestic industry growth. Then destroying or disabling an adversary's infrastructure and capabilities. Now, this is something which has gained importance lately. That is how you can cripple the other organizations or the other nations' infrastructure and capabilities. So every nation is building their cyber power or enhancing the cyber power to achieve this particular goal. And this is what the fear is, that in near future, like so all the wars that will be fought will be cyber warfare. Thus, how cyber attacks affect the national security? The cyber attacks can paralyze the government's decision-making systems. That is, if some misinformation is communicated, then it can affect the decision-making system. It cripples the nation's critical infrastructure. Like say, if you can control the PLCs that are connected to the critical infrastructure, then it can bring down that infrastructure which is being controlled by those controllers. Then it can cause massive panic and trigger inadvertent wars. Now again, this is if some information is communicated to the public, and if the reach of the information system is such large and so quick that if people take it negatively, then it can affect and cause inadvertent wars also. Now, to figure out the cyber power index of any nation, now there is a national cyber power index, that is the NCPI, which rates the various nations according to the capability and the intent, that whether that nation has the capability and whether that nation has the intent. Now, there, US and the China, like the US ranks as the first one with the capability. It has the highest capability, and its intent is in the number 2 position. And for China, again, the overall score is 41. The capability, they have a capability which is just after United States. That is, they are at position number 2 in, as far as capability is concerned. And their intent is number 1, that they have more intentions of attacking other nations. So the National Cyber Power Index is calculated using this formula. That is, these are the 1/7 into summation of x is equal to 1 to 7 and capability into intent. So there are some measures, that is about 32 intent indicators and 27 capability indicators, and all this information is collected from publicly available data that is available over the internet. And the NCPI measures the power of about 30 countries, and India is ranked at number 21. Now let us have a look at the cyber security ecosystem, the various cyber terrain layer model by Sean Riley. Now, to address this complex problem related to cyber security, let us see what all layers are involved in addressing the concerns related to cyber security. So this is a model which has been developed by Sean Riley. This is known as the cyber terrain layer model, whereby it discusses the various aspects of cybersecurity related to the government layer, the organization layer, whereby people are involved, then the persona layer, the software application layer, the operating system layer, the machine layer, language layer, the logical layers, the physical layer, and the geographical layer. Now this is the model which has been proposed by Sean Riley. And it involves the technology as well as the processes and the people. So these three, the people, the technology, and the processes, they are the 3 corners of this triangle. Now they have further elaborated as to what every layer means. That is, in the geographic layer, what they mean by geographic layer. In the physical layer, the hardwares and the cables. Then the logical layer, the communication ports and protocols, and the government layer. So they have divided into 14 layers, that is 0, 1 to 7. These 1 to 7 are the OSI layers of the networking. And then 8 to 14, they have listed other layers like the machine language, the operating system, the software application, the persona, the people, supervisory, temporal, the organization, and the government layer. So this is to say that this ecosystem involves the government organizations, the government, the cyber laws, the government which formulates the cyber laws, the regulations, the policies, the frameworks, agreements. It involves organizations which have to implement those policies, procedures, and information sharing. So unless and until the laws that are formed by the government are applied by the organizations, then the cyber security will fail. The security will be weak for the entire nation. So then you have the people who will be implementing those procedures and information sharing agreements. Then you have the various persona-related entities like the user IDs, the emails, and the phone numbers. Then you have software applications, the browsers, the office products. So this is to say that the various entities are involved in the implementation of a cybersecurity for a nation. So, a lot of documentation related to the various vulnerabilities, that is the common vulnerability exposures, the common configuration exposures, and the customer premise equipments, the common weakness exposures. So all these have been listed or enumerated and are available for general public. And the various vulnerability assessment systems, or the various systems which deal with the cyber security, enumeration of the various problems inherent in any system. So they provide consult these lists and provide you this information as to what all vulnerabilities exist in those systems. So now they have again detailed every cyber terrain layer wise, layer 0 to 1, the geographic and the physical layer. So they have enumerated it in the form of common attack pattern, whereby there are total 464 attack patterns as per version CAPEC v2.6. Then for layers 2 to 7, they have listed out the various CAPEX. I've just listed down a few only. Then the cyber terrain layers, the layers 8 to 11, which deal with the machine language operating system, the software application, the persona. So there you have, like, say, I will just take this buffer overflow in an API call. These have been enumerated. So all the problems that can occur at every layer, or all the vulnerabilities that can occur in every layer, so they have enlisted it and enumerated it nicely. Like, say, in cyber terrain layers 12 to 14, you have this social information gathering attacks, the information elicitation via social engineering, target influence via social engineering. So all these have been enumerated quite well in this layered model, the cyber terrain layered model. Now coming on to the advanced cyber attacks. Now let us see what are the various advanced cyber attacks that take place nowadays. The first is the brute force attacks. Now, brute force attacks relates to, like, say, trying to gain access to the system in an automated manner. That is to say that if I would like to gain access to a system, I may try multiple passwords by using an automated mechanism. So brute force attacks are basically launched on routers or other network equipments which do not implement the login failure policies. So like, so these devices which do not implement this login failure count as a policy in the system, so they are bound to fail in case of brute force attacks. That is, if somebody tries to break into the system by providing passwords multiple times and trying dictionary attacks or other rainbow attacks, so they can succeed. They may succeed at some point in time. So second is the man in the middle attack. Again, like, say, if there is somebody who is listening to any conversation, he can manipulate that information and can use it for his advantage, his or her advantage. So that is another frequent type of attack that happens. That is the man in the middle. Then the replay attacks. That is to say that if some conversation has taken place between two trusted parties, then the attacker, if he gains access to that entire conversation, then he can replay it at some other point in time with one of the trusted parties. Then you have this DDoS attack, that is the distributed denial of service attack. Again, this is a denial of service attack which affects the availability of the resource. Then you have the ransomware attacks. The example we have already seen, that is the WannaCry. You have the social engineering attacks, whereby you send a large number of spam emails. Then the phishing attacks, the supply chain attacks. The supply chain attacks relate to suppose you are using the products, say the networking products from a certain company, and if a hacker wants to infect your network, then they can, instead of infecting your network, they will directly infect the products that are being supplied to your organization. So that is a supply chain attack, that is called as a supply chain attack, whereby the products that are being delivered to your company are being attacked by the hacker in advance, and malwares are being implanted, and then you can your entire network will get affected by that malware. Then the attacks on the border gateway protocol, the domain name resolution system, the HTTPS protocol. So all these formulate these advanced cyber attacks. Then you have the hardware and the OS attacks. Like say recently, the CPU architecture, which provides this caching functionality. Now this was attacked, and this led to the success of this Spectre and the Meltdown attack. Then you have these rootkits, which if installed on the systems, like they provide the hacker to be anonymous. That is, the system seems to perform normally even when the hacker is accessing the system. Then you have the web application attacks, whereby you have the cross-site scripting attack. Then you have the SQL injection, the cryptojacking attacks. I will briefly discuss these attacks. Then the advanced persistent threats. That is again a very large amount of cyber attacks that is taking place nowadays. So brute force attacks, I've already told that you use an automated system, and high resource usage due to brute force attacks can cause denial of service, as well as they can access the resources for which they are not authorized. Then the botnet attacks, they look similar to this, whereby an attacker initiates an attack, and they have a command and control server by which they can attack a victim and from multiple locations. So thereby using the resources of the other persons, they can launch an attack on the victim. Then this supply chain attack, whereby these third-party vendors, now the third-party vendors which are supplying product to an organization, so the backdoor access is gained by the hacker, and the data is then flown to the targeted organization. So the product, if it is hacked and a malware is placed, and if the product is then installed in the network of the target organization, then that target organization gets attacked. Then this advanced persistent threats. Now this is a major concern nowadays, whereby this is a slow process, and it's a multi-step process. But once the hacker is successful, then they are able to get a what is called as the information leak, data leakage. So they are able to get the data from the organization's network. Now cryptojacking is a technique used by hackers, whereby they use the other computers or the other person's resources for mining in blockchains. Like a huge amount of computation power is required in mining. In blockchain technology, mining is a concept whereby you have to decide the N1s of the next block. So for finding out that that next block, so these resources of the resources, that is the various computers connected to the network and already poisoned by the hacker, they are used for cryptocurrency mining. That is the cryptojacking. Now, let me discuss one problem that exists in the existing session key determination in HTTPS protocol. Now, this HTTPS protocol is presumed to provide end-to-end security between a client and a server. Now, what happens in this communication is that when you use a session key, so you have to use a session key for the entire duration of the session or for the period for which you decide. But the problem is that when you use that session key, that is again that can be derived using the private key of the server. So this is a problem that is existing in the session key determination of the present HTTPS handshaking technique. So lately, a new technique has evolved, which is known as the ephemeral key based on Diffie-Hellman algorithm, whereby the session keys are multiple session keys are generated, and you cannot derive this next session key from the previous session keys, and that is how you protect the information in blocks. That is, even if the hacker is able to figure out the session key for one session, he will not be able to decipher the entire the information of the other sessions. So these are the ephemeral or short-lived keys. So perfect forward secrecy is a technique that has been introduced in HTTPS communication nowadays. Now this takes care of the problems that can arise if the private key of the server gets hacked in near future, and if there is some organization which is snooping into the communication that is taking place between the client and the server, and they are able to copy the entire communication. So they should not be able to decrypt that communication by using the private key of the server at later point in time. So this is the entire idea of this perfect forward secrecy. Then you have this HTTP strict transport security, that is the HSTS. So this is a mechanism that is nowadays incorporated in HTTPS communications. You may be knowing that even if you type http://yahoo.com or some other website. So earlier what it used to do was it used to redirect you to https://www.yahoo.com or any other website, whichever you wanted to access. Now the problem with this was that if there was a man in the middle attacker, then he could direct you to some other website and behave as if you have been provided with access to that system, and he can listen to the conversation and can misuse that information. So recently the development that has taken place in this front is that the HSTS list is maintained by the browsers, whereby like say no access to the system which has been listed as HSTS is provided using the HTTP protocol. So that is known as the SSL stripping attack that takes place, and to handle this SSL stripping attack, this HSTS functionality is required. Then in the advancements related to the firmware, the firmwares have also got advanced to provide security in like say UEFI, that is Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, is available nowadays. Instead of the BIOS, like this is replacing the BIOS in various motherboards. So it supports the secure boot, which means that the operating system can be checked for validity to ensure no malware has tampered with the boot process. Now the effort of all the software changes or advancements in all the softwares related to the firmware or the operating system or the other application softwares is to ensure that the malware tampered files are not executed or are not used by the system. So in UEFI interface, there is a mechanism called secure boot, which operating systems can make use of to ensure that no malware has tampered the boot process. Now it also supports networking features. Now the advanced UEFI firmware also supports networking features, which can aid in remote troubleshooting and configuration. Now it supports GUID partition table for larger drives and more partitions. Like instead of the MBR partitioning technique, nowadays it uses the GPT partitioning technique, whereby it can support larger drives which are larger than 2.2 terabytes, and larger number of partitions are supported. It also supports GUI and mouse for configurations. You can use this UEFI interface for configuring the firmware of your computer, and it's can be done using a GUI, and a mouse can be used for configuring those components. Now this another advancement that has taken place is in terms of the trusted platform module. Now every motherboard comes with, like say, this trusted platform module chip. Now this is a hardware chip or a security chip that is fixed to a motherboard, and this stores information related to the various keys and the various authorizations that are provided to the various software systems or the OS that will access this hardware. So currently a 20448-bit encryption key is used in this security chip. So the TPM is a computer chip that can securely store artifacts used to authenticate the platform. So unless and until that operating system is authorized to use that platform, the application is authorized to use that platform, the software is authorized to use that platform, the TPM module will ensure that the hardware cannot be used unless and until there is authorization for that access of that hardware. So these artifacts can include passwords, certificates, or encryption keys. A TPM can also be used to store platform measurements that help ensure that the platform remains trustworthy. And authentication and attestation are necessary steps to ensure safer computing in all environments. So the goal of this TPM is to ensure that all the computations that take place, the hardware and the software that are used for computing the things, they happen in an authenticated and attested manner. That is, somebody can verify that this information, whatever they are accessing through that system, it is not tampered with. Now, another advancement is in the form of sandbox program execution. That is to say that any code that is executed in the system is first of all executed in a separate portion of the computer, whereby the computer memory, the computer resources, they are not being accessed by the other parts of the operating system. So these resources, they first of all check the behavior of the program and which is being executed, and once it is ensured that the behavior is as per the policies of the system, then only the program execution is allowed to be performed in the main system. So this is the idea of the sandbox program execution. Now this onion routing or the Tor project, this is another advancement that has taken place. That is, if you want to be anonymous, or if any node on the network wants to be anonymous, then they can communicate with the server anonymously using this onion routing or the Tor software that is available nowadays. Now the concept here is that multiple keys are generated by the client, and every communication with the node is done using a specific key. That is, the intermediate nodes are decided well in advance, and these nodes the traffic to these nodes is sent using the encryption performed by that key. They can only decrypt their part of the message, and then they have to forward it to the other nodes, which can decrypt again their part of the message and then can forward it to the other node. So this is whereby the layers, multiple layers of keys are formulated around the message, and the message can only be decrypted by the one who has those keys. So this is the onion routing project or the Tor project that is being utilized in the darknet nowadays. Now, another concept that is being used heavily in networks, large networks nowadays, is the network access control. Now, this is achieved basically using these managed switches. Now, managed switches are those switches which can be programmatically controlled using softwares. So these managed switches allow the administrators to control the access to the ports. Like they can program the ports to be disabled or enabled as per the communicating node on the network. Now, this can be done well in advance. That is, it can be registration system can be developed for such nodes which can register themselves. Like in the registration process, you register the hardware, that is a MAC address of the node. And once that MAC address is registered, then the managed switch can be programmed so that if the access of a port is made by a registered node, then only that port is enabled and the traffic is sent across to the network. So this is the concept of network access control. So you have a NAC protected network, whereby unless and until the NAC policy has been satisfied by the client, the access to the resource is not provided. And if the NAC policy is not satisfied by the client, then there is a separate network known as the isolation network, whereby the node is not allowed to connect to the main network of the organization, and it has to follow the guidelines for the isolation network, whereby they can run the antivirus programs or the anti-malware programs. Then unified threat management is a concept which is old now, but is being used heavily in large organizations. So this UTM provides with features like intrusion prevention, the VPN concentrator, the email security, data loss protection, web content filter, and the anti-malware. So basically UTM is a device which provides you with a bundle of the solutions related to all these problems, related to intrusion, related to safe access of your network, related to the email security or the antivirus or the virus scanning of your emails. Then the data loss protection, it also provides you features like which can provide data loss leakage, which can prevent data loss, data leakage. Then you have this web content filters, by which they can figure out which URLs are to be allowed and which URLs have to be blocked. Then you have this anti-malware, whereby the malware scanning of the files or the content that is being transmitted across the UTM can be carried out, and based on the scanning results, the files can be made accessible or denied, or the access to those files can be denied. So multiple components are involved in this UTM. The air gap, I will talk a bit about this air gap security, why it is required. Now, if you have a mission critical system like the nuclear power plants, the thermal plants, the oil and natural gas extraction systems, so all these systems, they have these PLCs. Now, these PLCs are to be protected from any malware infections. So the best approach till date is the air gap security. That is, you do not connect it to the network, the production network, or the internet, whereby you have the peer-to-peer applications which are sending malicious contents, and thereby securing your network. But of late, the concept of data diodes have been developed, which is an alternate, which is a good alternate to the air gap security, whereby data flows only in one direction. The payload is given to the server in only one direction, and the TCP connection is established using a TCP server proxy and the TCP client proxy. So this ensures that the systems can be updated. The systems that are kept in the mission critical network, they can be updated, but no data can go out from that network. So that is the purpose of these data diodes. I just wanted to touch upon that. Technically, it's a very complex concept. How do you maintain the states, TCP and UDP? But there are devices which provide this functionality. Now, the success of any cyber security solution lies in threat intelligence. Now, threat intelligence can be in the form of indicators of compromise. Like these indicators of compromise, now what are those indicators? Let us see, have a look at those indicators. Now the network indicators, you have the IP address, the URLs, and the domain names. Now what do we mean by threat intelligence is, like, if, say, suppose in any organization attack has taken place, so the vulnerability, some vulnerability has been exploited in that network. So now that information is passed on to the other organizations, so that those networks can be protected. So this threat intelligence information is provided in the form of indicators of compromise as well as indicators of attack. Now the indicators of compromise are in this format. That is, if you have network indicators, then you have to provide information like which IP addresses, which URLs, which domain names. Then if you have this host-based indicators, then the malware name, which malware infected the system, what was the file hash of the system, malicious file hashes, and the dynamic link libraries, if any, they are associated with the system, and the registry keys which got infected. And if it is an email indicator, then it should have the source email address, the messaging objects, the attachments and links, the originating and the forwarding IP addresses. So this intelligence has to be cooperative. That is, the organizations involved, they cooperate with each other and pass on this intelligence information among themselves, so that if any compromise happens anywhere in anybody's network, this information is passed on to the other cooperating organizations also. Then advances in threat hunting, like you have these Yara rules. Like say Yara rules is a system which can be programmatically, like say you can write Python scripts or scripts in Java or other languages, by which you can figure out whether a malicious file has entered your system, or you can generate alerts related to the malicious content. This malware hash registry. To understand this, as we know that any file, a hash can be generated of any message. So file is nothing more than a message. So this malware hash registry, system, what it does is that it keeps the hashes of all the malware infected files, and this information is made available in the form of REST APIs. Like so this information can be accessed using the REST APIs, and this database is made available to all the interested parties. So this malware hash registry database is maintained by a number of groups. Now VirusTotal and this team Samaru are the ones where you can find, where you can get this information, and you can search for the various hashes of the files that you have in your system. Now, in terms of endpoint visibility, which is again a very important parameter for the cyber security, and like say if you have a large network, then if you have a good visibility of all the endpoints that are connected to your network, then half the battle is won. Like if you know what all processes are running, what all files are open, what all ports are open, what all communication is taking place in your network, then that is how you start securing your network. Like say you should have the visibility of each and every component in your network. Now this is a very painstaking job, like say to figure out as to what all processes are running, what all logs or alerts are being generated in the endpoints. That is, endpoint means the computer nodes that are connected to a network. Now for that, recent development that I've seen is the OS query mechanism, whereby you can write SQL queries to find out the state of any operating system log file, or you can read a log file, you can access the various hardware devices in that operating system. So this can be utilized to develop centralized systems whereby you can monitor the endpoints, and this is being done in a number of solutions. Now, I will just touch a brief upon how do you protect your PCs from getting infected by malware. So with Windows 10 operating system, I will just discuss as to what are the features that are available in Windows 10 operating system. So first of all, let us understand how malwares infect your PCs. Like first source is the spam emails. Then you have the malicious Office macros. Then the infected removable drives. Then the malwares can be bundled with other software packages, or you can get infected by accessing the compromised web pages. So these are the 5 sources from where a malware can enter a PC. Now, the Windows 10 has got multiple security features in terms of the Windows Defender smart screen. So Windows has an inbuilt antivirus software known as the Windows Defender. Now it provides a number of protection mechanisms in the form of this Windows Defender smart screen, the application guard, the user account control, the device guard, the exploit guard, the Microsoft BitLocker. Now BitLocker is a program by which you can encrypt your entire device and you can use it seamlessly with any application. So and then the Windows Defender credential guard. So all these solutions are built around this thing, built around security and to provide security for the browser, the application, the device, and the various operating system features. So Windows Defender Smart Screen, now it provides anti-phishing and anti-malware support. That is, if you are browsing any website which has the reputation of being a malicious website, then the Windows Defender Smart Screen will pop up and let you know that you have to this website is contains a potentially unwanted application. And Windows Defender Application Guard, now these are the same things like say the Defender Device Guard, whereby the program execution takes place inside the hypervisor protected memory location, and it doesn't allow other applications to be affected unless and until an application is found to be working as per the policies of the device. Then Windows Defender Exploit Guard, there again you have a lot of protection, the folder access, the exploit protection, the network protection, and the attack surface reduction. Now let us have a brief look at the cybersecurity ecosystem in India. First, we have this National Cyber Coordination Center, that is the NCCC. Now it's an operational cybersecurity and e-surveillance agency in India. So that is to say that every internet traffic that passes through any ISP, now they have access to all the data that flows through that through all the ISPs. So any data that you access from all the servers, they have access to that data. So they can scan the traffic within the country, flowing at the point of entry and exit, including the international gateway. So they have been authorized by the Government of India to carry out such an activity. Then there's another central monitoring system which monitors communications on all mobile phones, landlines, and the internet. It's in operation since 2013. And this CMS gives India's security agencies and income tax officials centralized access to India's telecommunications network and the ability to listen in on and record mobile, landline, and satellite communications. So earlier, the scenario prior to the implementation of CMS, that is centralized monitoring system, was like this: that every agency, intelligence agency, was required to contact these ISPs to gain access to the data that is flowing in and out of the country. But now, after the implementation of the CMS, they have a centralized, they have a center whereby they can access the data from a centralized location rather than contacting these individually, these ISPs individually. And now there's much talked about in National Intelligence Grid, that is the NAT grid, whereby the intelligence information is to be shared among 21 different organizations, and this intelligence information will allow the IB, the NIA, the CBI, the NCB, the FIU, ED, and these are the various organizations. These are 11 central agencies which will be able to access the information provided by the 21 different organizations which are under Government of India. So all the crime records and all the criminal tracking network and systems, which is a database that links crime information of FIR reports across 14,000 police stations, will be available under this National Intelligence Grid. Now this is a It is hoped that with the implementation of this NADGRID, the cybercrime reports will be handled much faster, in a much faster manner. Then you have this DRDO Netra. Now DRDO has developed a software called Netra. There is a network traffic analysis software which scans all the voice traffic and the data traffic that passes through the international gateways and any of the ISPs. It tracks for words like attack, bomb, blast, or kill in real time. And it provides all the intelligence agencies with the required information as to from where these words have originated and what is the intention of those persons. Then you have this telecom enforcement resource and monitoring. Again, this is formally known as the Vigilance Telecom Monitoring, VTM. It is the Vigilance and Monitoring Wing of the Indian Department of Telecommunication, that is the DOT. And it is made up of 34 cells. So it is basically related to the telecom sector. The NIXI, it has to do with the internet, that is ISPs. So the idea of NIXI is that all the traffic that flows between the various networks which are located inside India or various nodes, the traffic which is not required to flow outside, should not flow outside. So the NIXI acts as an exchange and it provides the gateway for the traffic to flow and remain within the country. So this helps in the efficient use of the international bandwidth, thus saving foreign exchange, and also improves the quality of service for internet users by avoiding multiple international hops and thus reducing latency. Now, this is another important use of this facility, whereby you can reduce the latency by using the NIXI services. Now, all the ISPs are connected to this NIXI now. The NTRO. Now, NTRO is a technical intelligence agency, under the National Security Advisor in the Prime Minister's Office, and it was originally known as the National Technical Facilities Organization, and it is a highly specialized technical intelligence gathering agency. Now, it is a separate agency which directly works under the Prime Minister's Office, and the National Information Infrastructure Protection Center, which is again an agency under the control of NTRO, has been created to monitor, intercept and assess threats to crucial infrastructure and other vital installations from intelligence gathering using sensors and platforms, which include satellites, underwater buoys. So they have been authorized to procure equipments which helps in monitoring the various critical infrastructure of the country, of what all communication is taking place with those infrastructures. It also includes National Institute of Cryptology Research and Development, NICTD, which is the first of its kind in Asia. So NTRO also has this Cryptology Research and Development wing, which is a very advanced wing, and it is the first of its kind in India. Now, NCII-PC that I discussed earlier, now the definition of critical information infrastructure as per the IT Act 2000, it defines critical information infrastructure as a computer resource, the incapacitation or destruction of which shall have debilitating impact on national security, economy, public health, or safety. Now, all the organizations which have a debilitating impact on the national security, the destruction of the information of which organization can have the debilitating impact on national security, economy, public health, and safety, come under this NCII-PC, and this is monitored by NTRO. Like the traffic flowing in and out of these organizations is monitored on 24/7 basis by NTRO. This CERT-IN, that is the Indian Computer Emergency Response Team, it has its office in the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. It is a nodal agency to deal with cybersecurity threats like hacking and phishing. It strengthens the security-related defense of the Indian internet domain. It has been set up in the year 2004, and various MOUs are signed by CERT-IN with the CERTs of other countries for exchange of cybersecurity information. So that is to say that the incident response team, it is the incident response team or the computer emergency response team of the India. That is, any incident that happens, the information about those incidents is made available by CERT-In to all the network administrators or the CISOs of the various networks in India. And any incident that takes place in any network has to be communicated to CERT-In for necessary action. Now, what is this National Information Security Policy and Guidelines? I will discuss a bit about this. Now, it is drafted by Ministry of Home Affairs. Its latest version is 5.0, which is dated 9th October 2014. Now, it is a 255-page document which contains the various management guidelines, the security controls, and the implementation guidelines for establishing a network and managing a network. Like if you have a cyber network or a cyber resource, then if you have a very large network, then what are the management guidelines? What are the security controls that you have to build into your system? And the various implementation guidelines are discussed in this document. Now, it follows a scheme whereby the adoption matrix of this National Information Security Policy has to be done based on the points listed out as top secret, secret, confidential, restricted, or unclassified. So that is based on the information that is being protected by that organization, or that is available in that organization. So based on that, you have to adopt the various controls or the various management guidelines or the implementation guidelines of that document. Now, the information classification, this top secret means information unauthorized disclosure of which could be expected to cause exceptionally grave damage to the national security or national interest. This category is reserved for nation's closest secrets and is to be used with great reserve. So there are 5 classifications of the information that has been done in NIS PG. That is the policy guideline of Information Security Policy Guideline of Government of India. So any information that is falling under these categories, the controls have to be implemented according to the information classifications, the controls provided for those information classes. So the various controls that have been discussed in this policy are related to data security, the application security, the identity and access management, the network and infrastructure management, the physical security, the security monitoring and incident management, the threat and vulnerability management, personal security, business continuity, disaster recovery, and security auditing and testing. So it covers the entire gamut of security issues.
Faculty development program.
Now we'll discuss something about this innovative measures in cyber security. So list of measures that can be implemented are the perimeter level security, multi-layered firewalls. Use of multi-layered firewalls enhances the security. Then web server security, hardened server with the website intrusion detection and blocking system. Then email security using paper-based OTP, two-factor authentication for secure email access over internet. Now, these are the measures that we have implemented in our organization. So that I have listed here as to what we have done for our organization. So authentication based on centralized LDAP and malware protection. We can use the SIEM integrated with NAC and NMDPS, that is the Network Malware Detection and Prevention System. So endpoint security, you can have the device, USB device blocking system. Now, this is the major concern in any organization. Like say, if you have a device USB that can be used or that can be accessed over a computer, then the first point of entry is this USB device only of the malware. Then website security, you can use this website intrusion detection and blocking system for malware protection. You can use this SIEM, that is the security incident and event monitoring, and NAC-based malware detection and quarantine system. For email security, then you can use a secure email access of resources over internet, Then access security, VPN for secure access of resources over internet. Then how do you handle malwares? Like there's a big challenge for large networks as to how to handle malwares. Now, at the perimeter level routers, you can have exhaustive IP block list from the three sources. Like say, you should not bank on only one source. Like say, we use multiple sources. Now, first is the CERT-IN, which provides this threat intelligence information in the form of IOCs and IOAs. Then we also use the IBM hosted non-CNC servers list, and we also use the open sourcely available Firewall list, which provides the malware spreading IP list. 4,000 network IDs are available in that list. Then email and proxy gateways with antivirus filters. This is a must. Endpoints with licensed Windows OS and MS Defender. Then Squid proxy-based internet access. Then SIEM with virus and malware signature detection in place. So this scheme can be utilized to handle malwares in large networks. Now we have also developed a network malware detection and prevention system, which detects malwares based on the rate of access of the sites across a proxy server. We have also developed a perimeter IP block list synchronizing system, whereby multiple devices are synchronized with IP block list so that they are in sync with the main block list of the network. Then we have also developed a UDBS as a USB device blocking system. Then this network firewall effectiveness measurement system. Now, you may have implemented a network firewall, but it's, the effectiveness of that firewall has to be measured from time to time. So this can be done by performing accounting of all the network flows across the firewall and store them as net flow records. Like you can profile the network flows that are happening across the firewall. You can maintain and store logs of firewalls, routers, and proxy servers. And you can convert the logs and flows into index data by using big data analytics. You can develop scripts, programs to search the indexes every 5 minutes for traces of blocked IPs present in the blocked IP list. So for infected PCs on our network, we can then take remedial actions. Like say if we find out that any node on our network is trying to contact any bad reputation IP node, then we consider that PC as an infected PC and take remedial action. Then in endpoint security compliance measurement, we need to have an endpoint security compliance measurement system also in large networks. So there we need to check for endpoints for OS updates and antivirus updates. We need to store traffic profiles of the PCs on the intranet and check traffic profile of the endpoint for suspicious traffic, and check for vulnerabilities on the endpoint and take remedial actions. Now a bit about SIEM, that is a security incident and event monitoring. So the various tasks that are performed by a SIEM system are log collection, log analysis, event correlation, log forensics, IT compliance, application log monitoring, object access auditing, real-time alerting, user activity monitoring, dashboards, reporting, file integrity monitoring, system and device log monitoring, and log retention. I will also discuss a bit about this information security dashboard. Now, what is required to be monitored? Now, if you are administering a large network, then obviously you need to have a crux of the security logging and the various detection mechanisms that you have put in place. You need to have a summary of that information. So that summary, what we do is we have this 12 block format in which we collect this anomaly detection as average monthly at the high in a day or a low in a day, and today's traffic. So here we measure the traffic that is flowing across our network, the rate of flow of traffic across our network. Then the vulnerabilities, that is the total in all servers, the web, DNS, mail, ext web. We have the various servers resources on the internet DMZ. So we measure the vulnerabilities for all those DMZ servers. then server hardening. So we have developed this dashboard to provide us a quick view of the cybersecurity status of our network. Then the SIEM effectiveness measurement system. So we need to cross-check whether the SIEM is performing as desired. So we have developed this SIEM effectiveness measurement system, whereby we inject virus traffic, malware traffic, botnet traffic, Tor traffic, network scans, and then we take various measurements and then find out if anything else needs to be done for enhancing the SIEM effectiveness. Now, the current state of the cyber security national security algorithm suite. Now, what NSA guidelines says is that we need to have an algorithm which is RSA 3072 bit or larger, and this has to be used for key establishment and digital signature. For Diffie-Hellman, we need to use 3072 bit or larger. Again, the usage is for key establishment only. And if you are using this ECDH, then we can use the 384 bit for key establishment. That is the elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman. And if you use this ECDSA with, then we have to use this again the 384 bit keys only. And for integrity, we have to use this SHA 384 and AES 256 for confidentiality. Now, the NSA keeps on updating these minimal national security algorithm suite requirements. And this is what it stands since 2016. Now, the 5 technological advances that are boosting cybersecurity are in the form of blockchain, the cloud technology, the IoT security, AI and machine learning, and application security. Now, at the end, I will provide some minimal cybersecurity tips that you can take with you. Like the first is that always check the padlock symbol. That is, when you access an HTTPS website, so you should check the information that is provided in that padlock by clicking on it. And then this is another tip that I would like to provide. That is, whenever you enter any login ID and password of any financial transaction, then you should enter it wrongly for the first time, so that if there is any malicious man in the middle, then you will get a second chance to figure out as to whether you are contacting the right server or you are accessing the wrong server. Then keep OS and antivirus updated. Use different passwords for different websites. Now, this is another important thing, that you should use different passwords for different websites. Use two-factor authentication if available. Use complex passwords, and always encrypt important files over the network, and never open unexpected mail attachments. Now, with this, I thank you for your patience in listening to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Participants have written few messages in the chat box. You
Sure.
can read it out.
Just hold. Okay, there are about 5 messages. Any more queries, sir? We can believe in any open hash registry group. Can we believe in open hash registry group? Okay, the question is from Manish Panchal, sir. He says that can we believe in any open hash registry group? Okay, the answer is that this information that is provided in VirusTotal or the Team Cymaru open hash group that I have stated, they the collection of the information is done from multiple sources. It's not only a single source, and they will tell you as to from which source they have received this information and why they have put it under that hash registry. So yes, you can very well believe in them if you are ready to figure out as to why this has been kept in the hash registry.
Sir, I also
Yes.
have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, actually, just like for online banking, a virtual
Okay.
keyboard is available. Like always, it is available. So
Yes.
actually, I have heard that if you are not using your own PC in that particular case, it is good to use virtual keyboard because
Yes.
that is more secure as compared to the simple
Yes.
kind of
True.
keyboard. So is this thing true?
Yes, ma'am. This is
Okay.
true, but yes, there are techniques of mapping that virtual keyboard, and that information can also be taken by not using keyloggers, but by graphical mapping of the screen or pixels. So that is true. Like say cybersecurity, you cannot have 100% technique which is secure. Like there are cases whereby that virtual keyboard can also can be hacked. Like say information in that virtual keyboard can also be tracked. But yes, this is far better than what you do with normal keyboard.
Okay, thanks.
Any more question?
Tomar sir,
Tewari sir?
I wanted to have one question. I thought now time is getting
Yes,
up.
go ahead.
The question is, what is the use of this salt in the hash function?
Which function, sir?
So you say the password is stored in the hash value / password.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
there is a notion of a
Salt.
salt there, and then the salt value is checked again. So
Yes, yes, yes.
So what
So
is
the idea is, yeah, the idea is that if you have two users with the same password, then the hash value will be the same.
right.
So what the system does is it gives us different salt value to two different users.
I see.
So what happens is the hash that is generated is not the same.
Uh-huh.
So the password file, you cannot tell that these two users have the same password. So this is just one level of protection.
And this salt value can be seen into that / password file. Or
Yes,
you read
yes,
it?
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
One can see.
Yes, sir. Salt value is stored as is. Whatever is the salt value will be stored in that password file.
Oh.
So-
I mean, I have a small question. I mean, this is part A is, and of course, I have understood that if the two people have the same password, still their hash value will be different because depending on the user 1, user 2, they will add some number, maybe
Yes.
37, 42 or so. But that you can see there.
Yes, sir.
The second thing was the password hacking business.
Yes, sir.
Anyway, the machine will sort of stop after 3 times you enter the password. It will block and say contact the system administrator.
Yes, sir.
Whatever the number, 3, 5 times.
Yes, sir.
Now, but what I shall do, or I mean not I, but normally a hacker will do, is he will not try all the passwords. So,
Okay.
so suppose he wants to hack Prakash Vivara's account on GSTI. So what he will do is he will sort of take names of Prakash, his wife Smita, his daughter Pooja, GSTI, Indo, 1950, all this. And then there are some 20 or 30 things only, my phone number. Now I do all permutation combinations, run onto the hash function in the local machine in my PC maybe. And I know, suppose the studio is using Ubuntu Linux. I find out all the hash values, different hash values. And then somehow if I can get the hash value of / password through some vulnerability from the LDAP server, then I can just smash that one. I mean, so how is it being protected?
Sir, like say, if the permutation and combinations that you can make out of, say, suppose your relatives' names or your someone whom you know.
Right.
But the combination of these alphanumeric keys, the combination of these numbers, special characters, that is quite large, sir. That is quite large. You cannot make the you cannot generate all the hashes of all those sets of combinations.
No, what I'm saying is on my local machine,
Okay.
I just sort of run this program, keep on generating all hashes. If I have that value known, the value of the true value which is there of
Yes.
a particular person, then I shall just try to see which one is matching. Or you are saying
Yes.
that number itself will be very large, is it?
Yeah, that will be very large, sir. That will be very large. That is actually, you can do that. That is what is done. Like say, we also do it when we forget our passwords. Like say that I have done once or twice myself by using John the Ripper. There is a tool called John the Ripper, by which you can generate a combination of various strings of characters, and then you can compare it with the hashes that are stored there. So that is there. Tools are available. You can do that. That we use, but that takes a lot of time, sir. For cracking a 9-character password, let me tell you, like say I used it on a 3.6 gigahertz server with 128 GB RAM. It took me about 3 days to just crack a 9-character password, of which I was knowing a bit of like say 4 or 5 characters I was already knowing.
I see.
So it takes a lot of time, sir.
Okay, thank you for very practical tips. And you have as you said, the government has large amount of hardware. You have large amount of hardware available to you.
Yes.
And therefore, the things which can be done and which cannot be done can only be understood by a person like you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks for telling me.
Okay, thank you, madam.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. You have highlighted security measures, security provisions, security aspects, security tips, which were not explored in this FDP yet. So thank you so much, sir, for elaborative session with full of completeness. It is also appreciated by students. So once again, I forward thank you from all the participants and from me also, as you have stolen the time from your busy schedule. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for inviting me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.